Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. The podcast dedicated to telling unusual, underappreciated, and interesting conservation stories that inspire me, your host, Jack Baker. On this week's show, I am joined by my very good friend, Tasnia. She is here to tell us about the street dogs of Bangladesh, something that, as you can probably see by the length of the episode, there is a lot to talk about. It's so interesting, so fascinating. She's so passionate about the topic that it is a pleasure to listen to her talk about these dogs and about her work with them in Bangladesh. I really hope you all enjoy, and I hope you kind of appreciate the lighter-hearted elements of the episode. Along, there are some hard-hitting moments, but I hope you all appreciate the lighter elements because it's me and Tasnia kind of talking as we do all of the time. So there are some laughs, there are some serious moments, there are some interesting moments, there are some some just really really good nice moments that I'm glad we've recorded and we've got for you all to enjoy. And yeah, for anybody who knows both of us, I hope you enjoy listening to this and it takes you back to St Andrews where we met. Just have a coffee, close your eyes, imagine we're in Zest or outside Taste or we're in the Union or something, and it's pretty much the same as the chat that we would normally be having. So I hope you all really enjoy that as well. For now, I will sign off and I'll let this interview play, and I hope you all really really enjoy it. Before I go, of course, quick mention: make sure to follow us on social media and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our content. So we're at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And yeah, we're on all of the streaming platforms, so you can follow us on there as well. So I will let you go and enjoy this interview. And thank you very much for listening. Welcome back to the show. I am now joined by my good friend Tasnia Khandaker Prova, and she is a development practitioner who is interested in animal welfare and is currently based in Bangladesh. So thank you very much for joining me today, Tasnia.
Thank you so much for having me, Jack.
It is my pleasure. So, first of all, if you could introduce yourself and just give the listeners a little bit of your background. Who are you and why are you here today?
Pause for laughter. Hi, I'm Tasnia. I'm Jack's friend. Also a development practitioner who has had experience working in animal welfare in Bangladesh for about 2 years. Essentially, got an opportunity to work for a very specific program related to street dogs in my country right after I graduated from school. So I finished my undergrad and then I went on and served as a program manager for this particular, specific program dedicated to street dogs. And I just feel like you invited me because it's a very interesting sort of aspect that I don't think it doesn't get a lot of attention because it's very specific. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of my speciality, finding things like the pangolin that not many people know about, but I feel like more people should because I know, having spoken to you a lot about it, yes, it's definitely interesting and it's definitely something we can have a very long conversation about. So I'm very glad that you have given me
And
the
we
time
have
today.
had very
And we
long conversations about
I was
about it.
thinking about this actually the other day because I was like, well, how did me and Tasnia first get to know each other? And it was, we met and we discussed street dogs for probably, well, I say we discussed, you talked at me about street dogs for a while. And then the friendship was born when I was in Toronto in Canada because I was putting up pictures of Toronto Zoo
Yeah.
and you were replying to them all, and I was like, oh, I like this person. She kind of wants to see all the animals.
Yeah.
She loves them as much.
I don't think I actually knew what your subject was because, the graduate school was also mushed up. And
Mhm.
so, there were the politics people Natalia's gonna kill me for getting the name wrong of her subject, but it was just so jumbled up. But I saw you, and we were on each other's Instagram, and I saw like how like you post about animals the way I would post about animals, and I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, yes, I love them all. And I think, yeah, we started talking on the basis of that, and I was like, oh my goodness, we could totally be friends. Like, here I am, not having had a single conversation with you, dreaming of like that one day when we were gonna hit it off, and we did. The best part about meeting you, I think, was the first day we ever had like a full day together was when you went out of your way to, do me a favor and introduce me to someone you thought would be a good supervisor for me. And I was just like taken aback. And then we went and had coffee, and the entire time I was just talking about dogs. At you again, at you, because I wouldn't let you interject or like, I'm like, yes, Jack, absolutely, but here's more. So yeah.
Oh, it was, yes, and so yes, and then we have been best of friends ever since. So it's
Yeah.
been kind of bonded over animals, which is why perfect guest. And just for context, for people who don't know, I'm sure we will force all of our friends to listen to this conversation. But we met in St Andrews, both doing degrees, mine in conservation and yours in international development, and so slightly different things. Which actually leads me to my first question, which was while I knew you, or when I met you, you were studying international development, which I think a lot of people would think is a very human kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
what kind of made you want to do the kind of animal welfare side when you were
Yeah.
studying or went to study this kind of human focused thing? What was your initial attraction to the kind of animal welfare thing?
The interesting thing is, I did my undergrad in economics and marketing.
Hmm.
So it wasn't even like at that when I was doing my undergrad, all everyone around me was like, very corporate minded. Like, if you have to make it big, you just need to earn the most money. You need to, get into multinational companies and like work your life away, essentially. And I think I always had deep down, I always had a problem with that notion. Like I just genuinely, even when I talked about business, I talked about social business, um, or I was more attracted to it. And so I just couldn't sort of combine the two things, like my idea of life where I do something meaningful and obviously having to make it big or like having an earning. Um, and so luckily what happened is when I graduated, I used to I used to post a lot of pictures of my own dog. Um, and which, by the way, is sort of like now it's gotten a lot of attention in Bangladesh, like having pets and interacting with dogs. But back in the day when I was a kid, it was a very rare thing to talk about, like animals or like dogs has pets, because it's not that common. So I'd post about the my dog all the time, and the previous program coordinator of the organization that I worked for really saw how I interacted with my dog and knew that I had the credentials to run a program, as in like be a program manager, because I was trained up in that. Because when you do business administration, you learn about HR, you learn about like how to run a program essentially. But and so she reached out to me and she was like, "Oh, there's an opening. I'm going to be leaving soon, so why don't you apply?" And I hadn't even finished my final exams for my undergrad at that point in time. But the notion of like, I really, really wanted to do something meaningful. And with animals, something like that, I feel like I needed a gateway to express all the love that I had. And someone just literally reached out to me and was like, "Oh, there's an opening. Would you apply?" And that was the first job I ever applied for after my undergrad. And I got the job, and that's where it started. And it was a surreal experience. Even when I went for my interview, I was greeted by dogs before I was greeted by humans. And I was like, I really need to get this job. So, yeah, and that's how it started. So,
Hmm. That's really interesting, and I think that's the foundation of anyone who wants to work with or for animals, is this foundation of kind of love and respect and
yeah.
just wanting to be around them and wanting to do well for them and just needing to find a channel of just to get all of that kind of um, very important stuff out. So you mentioned it there. What was the? Can you tell us a little bit about more about the organization that you worked for, and what its kind of goals were?
Yeah. The organization is called Obhoyaronno, Bangladesh Animal Welfare Foundation. It's a little difficult to pronounce, but what it means sanctuary in Bangla, which is our native tongue, my native tongue, essentially. And so it started about like 11 years ago, and started with my director, Rubaya Ahmed, sort of wanting to change, the street dog scene in Bangladesh, because at that point in time, street dogs were killed off by the government, and killed in gruesome ways, in ways like if you ever witnessed it, like you would carry on the trauma of that for I think the rest of your life. And people just knew that, oh, you have a street dog, someday people are going to come and then kill them off. So Rubaya Apu's own dog, who was vaccinated and taken care of, was killed, wrongfully killed by government officials. And because they used to do that, I'm just gonna give like a disclaimer for people who are listening. It's gonna be a gruesome sort of description, but it sort of hits home because that's why she essentially left her career to start this absolutely new thing never heard of before in Bangladesh. So the dog was caught by people essentially because it was taken care of by humans. It was trusting of humans. So these sort of dogs that are actually taken care of by humans are easier to catch, and essentially would lead the officials to get paid more, because they used to get paid by the number of dogs that they would kill. So it was an entirely like cruel process, and her dog got caught in the uh, you know uh, just awful, died, and she ran after the truck, like the truck full of dead dog bodies, and she ran after it, found the body, and just like I can't even imagine my own dog being killed that way. And so that sort of catapulted her into thinking, this cannot go on, like this cannot be the future, or like this cannot be the present, anything. And so she fought for years. There were like different versions of what Operna was. Like it was like a shelter in the beginning, as I believe, and it didn't work out because again, there are 50,000, over 50,000 street dogs just in Dhaka city, which is the capital city, and again, the rest of Bangladesh is like out of the calculation. So it didn't work out because it wasn't feasible, it wasn't sustainable. Like you keep on bringing dogs, but then what? And then if they breed, then there's more dogs, and then you need more resources, and it's like an endless sort of pool. And so she was fighting on the legislation front to have this, culling, which means like the removal of dog from its location and like killing the dog, essentially anything that leads to the death of a dog. She was trying to stop that in Dhaka City through legislation, and at the same time, she, I think, got in contact with HSI, which is Humane Society International, to sort of train up a team in Bangladesh so they can do what is called CNVR. So it's catch, neuter or spay, vaccinate, and return. So this is essentially a program where you catch the street dogs, you neuter or spay the dogs, you vaccinate them, and then return the dogs to the exact location that they were picked up from. In a cycle where it's sustainable, like the dogs know where their homes are, because essentially street dogs know where their homes are. They wouldn't, like, if you come to Bangladesh, you'll see that dogs don't go from one street to another just because their territories are marked. And so that is the program that started, and obviously years went into it, and I joined, I think, in its 8th or 9th year, and so essentially managed the whole program of CNVR. So I oversaw a team of about 14 people, the most amazing team ever. And so we did catch up to like 20 and sometimes 30 dogs, depending on the location, depending on the resources we have at bay. And they would all be spayed and neutered and vaccinated and then returned again the next day or the day after, depending on their circumstances, to their location.
Interesting.
A
Very
lot of
sad.
information at the
Very,
same
very
time. Yeah.
and there's things that like there's a lot of stuff there that I wanted to kind of we'll definitely come back to because there's so many things that you've touched on
Yeah.
that I'm like, okay.
I just talked at you again. Oh, memories.
Um, yeah. Oh well, no, it was good. It was good. So, um, what I wanted to help people, I know you mentioned the kind of 50,000 dogs.
Yeah.
I think for people who aren't in kind of areas where there is that sort of
Yeah.
populate dogs, especially obviously here in the UK, we have dogs that are strays and things, but not anywhere near that scale. Um, just to help people kind of understand the issue more, how does it get to 50,000 dogs? Where do all these dogs come from? Like, how does that happen?
Um, I like very surprisingly, that number is big. As in, if you're like looking to manage that number of dogs, but essentially, even research says that in an urban city, that ratio is like from people to like dogs, it isn't that high in Dhaka essentially. And so that was shocking to me when I first learned it as well. Like, oh, there's supposed to be more dogs because the puppy mortality rate in Bangladesh is very high as well. So if you have essentially 7 puppies, um, like it's likely that 2 will make it, 2 will survive. So that's a high mortality rate. But coming back to your question, I think dogs have always been around. Like dogs, like I feel like when I hear stories from my father or my grandfather, like dogs have always been a part of like our idea of what an urban city looks like. And in villages, like there were always like guard dogs, or even my dad who served in the military, he would talk about dogs just taking the role of hunters, or like they would take the role of like these CSI agents where they would just look for insurgents, just because the military officers would feed them. Like it's not even training. um, and so, like, I think street dogs in Bangladesh are extremely resilient, extremely intelligent, extremely adaptable to a lot of circumstances. And I think because of their nature, they've just survived throughout the infrastructure sort of changing. Obviously, it's been so long. Dhaka is way more populated and way like there are way more buildings and everything, which also means like food shortages are a thing. But still, they made it through. Um, and I guess there's breeding seasons. They breed. There are a lot of dogs. They just stayed. Like they just wanted to stay, so they stayed. And I'm grateful for it. Part of the reason I feel like I talked at people about dogs is because I miss them so much. And there's like this understanding of I miss my own dog, sure. Absolutely. But I also missed how street dogs are here. Like for you to get down from a building, and these are dogs, most of them just want like a pat, just want like you to love them a little bit and like give them a little bit of food. And they have just so much love to give. And I just missed that so much. So I just, interacted with as many humans as I could about dogs.
I didn't actually think about that. That being something you would notice when you were in the UK. Like I wouldn't even have thought about. I wouldn't have even clicked that. Oh, there's not as many dogs because obviously, whenever you saw someone walking
Yeah.
a dog, you were like,
Yeah.
up and
You know how I was like, oh my goodness, there's a dog. There's a dog. But I genuinely, I talked to the very director that I mentioned, Rubaya Apu, about this. Like, the withdrawal is real. Like to be in a facility full of dogs, residential dogs, and like 30, 20 dogs coming in every day, and me interacting with them, to literally being shipped off to another country where I'm like, can I stare at your dog for like a second because I really want love? It's just it's been difficult. Difficult. Oh.
next question. Let's. Um, so something else kind of carrying on that conversation in a way is what would your day to day be like when you were working for the organization? You said there's like you're seeing 20 to 30 dogs all the time. What is your
Yeah.
kind of you wake up in the morning when you would go in, what is the kind of situation?
Okay, so as a program manager, my day is supposed to essentially start from 6 a.m. in the morning. But luckily, I just had such a great team that I didn't have to, micromanage. I don't think like, oh my goodness. I feel like I would describe the Obhoyaronno team separately. I would need to because then I would continue talking at you because I love them so much. But so essentially, I'm supposed to stay awake and stay alert because the team goes out catching really early because of like the infrastructure of the town and the city we live in. Even if locations are pretty close, for 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 dogs to be caught and then returned into the facility by the time frame, denoted by international welfare standards, that a dog can be inside a car, like it can get hot. So we need to really focus on the fact that okay, by the first time a dog is caught, and by the last dog, we need to also calculate in the time that it takes to get back to the facility. So it starts really early. And so there were times when I was like woken up and like there are issues like something with the vehicle and something with like the number of dogs, or like it's raining suddenly, and when it's raining you have to like stop catching because when it rains street dogs obviously scatter. And so just to let me know that there are going to be a less number of dogs than the target amount, number. So that happens early, and then I go to the facility at about 9:10 a.m. And then by that time the dogs are back and they're resting, because they need to feel like, imagine like you being taken, literally taken from your home to some random place, and a place where you may not have seen a lot of kind human beings. It depends on your interactions. And that also depends on like how you were caught, because some dogs are very like human friendly and they can genuinely be scooped up and like put in a van. And then other dogs you would need to be very careful because they're wary of human beings. So they're allowed to rest, and then their temperatures are marked, their pressures checked, like how they're doing. Their veterinary officers and animal welfare officers, who also do the catching, but also can sort of see if a dog is acting out of place or if they're like stable. And so after a while, when a vet is sure, okay, they've rested enough, then they're weighed, and like the whole process of CNVR sort of starts. So they're weighed, and then anesthesia happens, and they're prepped for surgery, and then surgery happens, and then they're taken to their recovery canals. So where they're essentially laid and like put to rest. No, I feel like the put to rest is like a wrong word to use, but
Yeah.
they're like resting,
Yeah.
and their temperature and pressure is checked like every 5 minutes. So there's an officer inside the kennel at all times,
Hmm.
um, and if he sees anything that's like wrong with a particular dog, like they're having difficulty, and if they haven't woken up in a very long time, then you have to alert the vets, and me essentially. So my job is to make sure everything of that, like the whole process of every single dog going through that entire line of action, happens seamlessly and happens within animal welfare standards. No dog is mistreated. Like we can't let the target mess with the standards that we are going to have to deal with every single dog, because essentially that's why we're there. We're animal welfare representatives. And like sometimes fights break loose because again they're street dogs from different territories and they're alpha dogs. Like some are bound to get into fights, and so to notice that, to separate them into separate kennels, like it's a whole like when I'm out and making my rounds, it's hectic, and I need to make sure the team knows that they have to be efficient but at the same time very caring, and they are that way. Like I feel like even in my absence, if I called a day, like if I called like a sick day, called in sick, I don't think that they would, um not do such great work. Like, I don't think that they're just gonna be lazy or anything, because they're just the best team again. But yeah, so after that, I'm supposed to, like, I get all these surgery sheets of like all the, again, the dosage of anesthesia, starting from that to at what time they entered surgery and then what time they got out, because we need to like keep a record of all of that. And if something goes wrong with the dog, then what happened? If maybe he was prepped, but then the vet said she or he is not, safe for surgery anymore, then to make a record of that and see if there are issues that are created by us. Maybe there's something that we can improve. Again, when you work for animal welfare, I think everybody involved, regardless of how used to we are to a process, we need to remember there's always, always scope to improve. So keep the records and to essentially make sure the team's doing great, the dogs are doing great, and it's a good day so far. And that's my job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
also, oh, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt again. The part where dogs sort of say hi to me before my human team does is because there are a couple of residential dogs essentially, who we've tried to give up for adoption, but never really found a good home, or like a home for them specifically, because there's a dog named Dio. He was chained up and abused in a particular family, and then he was rescued, and then we tried to give him up for adoption like twice, and every time he would leave the facility, he would stop eating. And like people would be like, yo, he's sick, I'm so scared. And I'm like, the moment he enters the facility one more time, he's like having the time of his life. He's eating, he's bullying all the other dogs. So it's like, it's his home, and you can't, like, you have to recognize that as well. So we have like 6 of these dogs there, and they're constantly around me. um, Part of my job is also to open doors for them. They stare at me and they bark like, why aren't you opening the door? And so that's also part of my job description. I just needed to put that out there. Yeah.
just that's the most important part of them all. Opening doors.
Absolutely,
Opening
absolutely,
doors.
absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, it sounds hectic and a lot to do, but also very rewarding. And I wanted to ask what your favorite part of that position is. What was the best thing about that job for you?
I feel like it's gonna be a corny answer. But honestly, just every time I went back to sleep, or like, it was hectic. It was hectic, and it was very, like, I couldn't turn off my phone essentially. Like, it could essentially blow up any time of the day, and there could be something that needed to be dealt with. Um, but just knowing that I'm involved in something worthwhile, and seeing kindness in places that I thought, like, my skeptical self, or my pessimist self was like too. I am still too wary of human beings to a certain degree, I think. Like, but I think one of my favorite days was, I was at work. I was doing administration work, and like, it was hectic. I was in the office, and then this guy comes in rushing through our doors, and he's like very, frazzled. So he's like, where's Tiger? And I'm like, who's Tiger? He's like, no, you picked up Tiger. I know you picked up Tiger. Again, I feel like because of this perception that people like my father's generation have constantly seen dogs being killed off if they're, picked up by government officials. Now that we have a van with a government logo on it, because obviously we need that sort of support. For them to see dogs being picked up on the van, they just think they're being shipped off somewhere to, for not good reasons, because they're not trusting. And I think there's good reason for it.
Hmm.
So he runs into the facility, and he's like, where's Tiger? And again, this man traveled about, I would say it took about an hour and a half to get to our facility from the location that we picked up from, because it was midday and there was traffic. I think even more than that. Um, Also, he was, like, we have these roadside shops, they're called tongs, where you sell like very like, oh, you sell tea or like biscuits. It's like very small scale. And there's just one person who sells, the items. So if you're gone, you essentially have to close shop. And the people who run these sort of stores live on the wage they earn daily. It's not like you can save a lot of money. So the fact that he shut down his shop, traveled all this way, and then demanded to find out where Tiger was. And there's so many tigers. Like, I feel like that's one of the most common names of street dogs in Bangladesh. But he was like, "Where's Tiger?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Can you see? Do you see him? Can you recognize him?" Because there were a lot of dogs in the kennel, and then he can't find it in like the catching kennel. He couldn't find it, and I'm like, okay. And he was very visibly worried, very visibly like trying to tell me, I will pay for his vaccination. I don't have the money right now, but I will like pay like in installments, like trying to make a case because he thinks I'm about to kill his dog. And then we travel to the recovery kennel, and that's where we see Tiger. Like, his vaccination is done, his surgery is done, and he's woken up. Like, he's starting to wake up, so he's a little wobbly. But as soon as Tiger, I think, hears his voice, he starts to like really want to move. And so this is again a dog, like, he's starting to get off anesthesia, so he's like moving all wrong. And so the guy got even more tense, like, "What have you done to my dog?" And I'm like, "No, he's gonna wear off. Don't worry about it." But and Tiger, like, he patted Tiger, and he was like, "No, you know what?" And I told him, like, you'll find him exactly where we picked him up from. Like, we have an app that says, like, we have pins that drop like exactly the GPS location of the dogs based off their numbers. Like, it's a very efficient sort of smart system. And he was like, "No, no, no, I'm gonna pick him up. I'm gonna pick him up. He's gonna come with me." Like, I think I went back into the office thinking really highly of humans, like the capability of having so much love and being able to show it and having it reciprocated. The way Tiger is like, he's literally wobbly, but trying to get to him because he recognizes his voice. I think that was one of my favorite days. Also, we have these site visits because I have to go see what the team does when they're trying to assess, or we have these days when we go back and check the dogs marked that have already been spayed or neutered or vaccinated, to see if they're doing okay, to see if they're how's their health. It's called a post-op check, essentially. And so this one time I was following the van, and the team was doing post-op checks, and I was seeing how they catch them, and like if there are things that we can improve on. And I kept on seeing that some dogs recognize the team members, and they weren't like running away. In like cartoons, you have this dog catcher, and dogs sort of run away from this catcher. And these dogs were sort of coming towards the team. And it melted my heart. Like, just an example of, if you treat these animals nicely, if you give them love, they will remember, and they will show that same compassion, same love for the rest of their lives. And I think just to witness that makes, like, I feel like I'm a better person just because of that drop. Like, because I worked there, I'm a better human being. And so, like, these moments of like and the team, oh, there would be breaks obviously in the middle of work. So you do like 10 dog surgery done, then the team takes a bit of break and then starts surgery again. Even during that break, when I don't expect people to be inside the kennels all the time, like they can oversee how the dogs are doing from afar, like I would see people inside the kennels just patting puppies and playing with them, and just, it would bring me so much joy. It was just like, just, yeah, thank you. I feel like I'm getting emotional just by talking about it, but it's just to witness kindness regularly, and to witness just compassion given to these animals who haven't had the chance to get that on a regular basis. Just, it was genuinely the best part of my day.
Hmm. I think that's incredible, beautiful stories, and I think that's
Yeah,
something that we can all. I'll ask you at the end of the interview for some advice for people to kind of take away if they want to help. But for right now, I think it's something that's worth mentioning is just be if you extend kindness out into the world, whether that be to other people or to other species, just makes the world a much nicer place to be, and it makes the world like
absolutely.
it doesn't take a lot. It just takes just showing basic compassion, which I think we've gotten a little bit better over the last year. People are
Yeah.
getting a bit better, but yeah, just kind of be aware of how your actions affect the kind of animals, not just the people around you, and that'll kind of make the world a better, more friendly, wonderful place to be.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
feel like some people can be completely lost on their understanding. I remember this one incident of a mom complaint, like calling my office and saying, "Oh, there's a dog here, a ferocious dog. Take her away, take her away." And I'm like, okay. And these complaints are again also seriously taken because some of these complaints they talk about dogs in a way that they feel like the dogs are rabid. So since this is a vaccination center and essentially a program that is to humanely manage dogs, dog population, and second, another vital, very important part of the program is to eliminate rabies or control rabies. And so these complaints are taken very seriously. So she was like, "Oh, she's ferocious, she's that, she's this." And so when we sort of got into it more and we got more information, we found that her son had poked a mom dog. Like she had recently given birth, and there were five puppies, like very tiny puppies there. And obviously, she's going to be protective of her puppies. And he sort of poked the mom around and she retaliated. It's not like she bit, but she barked. And it scared the little boy. And then she went to his mother and complained. And obviously, the mother retaliated. And I sort of wanted to communicate like, you are what you're doing is you're being protective of your son, and what the female dog is doing is being protective of her children. It's just like the same line of empathy, but you just make the connection, please. Just make the connection. And don't go near like mothers, especially around puppies. Like it's a part of nature. Like we're all a part of the system where moms are supposed to be very protective. Like please don't poke dogs. It's as simple as that. And so, yeah, having these ridiculous conversations was also a part of my daily job. So fun.
mhm. Yeah, that leads me very nicely onto the next question, which we've covered the best, but also there must be incredible challenges that come alongside that, both in dealing with the dogs, but also with dealing with people. So I guess if we start with dogs,
Yeah.
they're probably less of a challenge.
Yeah.
What are the challenges of working with these essentially wild animals that aren't? What's the kind of challenges that come along with that?
I feel like part of the like I think catching street dogs is the most hectic part
Hmm.
because they are going to some are going to really retaliate. Some just eat the biscuits and just want more biscuits so they get on the van.
Hmm.
But there are others who are like, I don't want to leave, like where are you taking me? And so there's a lot of risk to on like it's a very like hectic job for especially like the team that catches. I remember whenever I used to go on like field visits, so I would witness them catching. I would come back completely breathless, like this close to taking the day off. And again, that shows how usually in development we have these program managers, but we also have to give where credit is due, like give credit where it's due. And you have to, I feel like even in like other sort of not just animal welfare, other programs, there are people who do like extensive field work and like go to these places. Of course, like there are people directing them, but the team would fall apart if these people didn't do as good a job as they obviously did. And some would come back with injuries. And so you had a team to sort of handle that, and funding just for their vaccinations, and so that they're careful. And yeah, but mostly I feel like people are gonna say that I'm biased, especially if anyone from Bangladesh is listening to this, and if they are scared of street dogs. I feel like I've had multiple conversations with people where they're like, "Oh my goodness, that dog just came to bite me," and from my eyes, that dog's just literally there, like doing his own thing. But when there's a person who's scared of dogs, they just see their perspective of the entire situation is so different.
Mm-hmm.
And just dealing with these people and dealing with dogs who have a tendency to bark or, just be a dog is very difficult, because I feel like they just want them to be quiet, not move, not look at them. And it's not going to be that. I feel like part of being humans, and if you truly believe that we are better than other creations, other living beings, and we're capable of, we're so smart, and we deserve all the resources and deserve to waste them on us. Truly, you must also agree that you have the ability to empathize more than the dog on the street with limited food, limited, like, literally, we say the streets are their homes, but do they have shelter when it's raining? No. So just to deal with, I feel like I went on, like I was trying to talk about how dogs can be a little, problematic, but it's not true. And so I went off on another trajectory when I'm blaming human beings. But yeah, there are certain dogs that are more difficult to deal with. They can be more, having behavioral issues. But I think when you work for animal welfare, you sort of also empathize with why they must behave this way. So
Mm-hmm.
there must be a story behind why they're reacting to certain things. So, extremely. Um, and so even then, you're empathizing. Um, so essentially, the short answer is dogs, no problem. Humans, all the problem.
Yeah, okay. Uh,
Short
I,
stuff.
um, you kind of went into the human challenges there with the having to communicate the kind of the empathy in different aspects. And I guess
Yeah.
something that I was kind of hoping to touch on in the human challenges as well, though, would be when you have a government organization or the government that has been getting rid of these dogs
Yeah.
and kind of trying to minimize the problem in a very different way to the way you're acting.
Yeah.
Are there ever conflicts or challenges in that aspect? Are they still around kind of doing what they're doing, or have they kind of stopped doing that now that you're there?
Every day. Um, no, genuinely, every day. I feel like ugh, that was the hardest part of my job. That was the hardest, most difficult part of my job, because even partners or people who clearly knew that there was legislation now that protected these street dogs, and before there was a full-fledged law, there was a writ petition that the High Court ruled in our favor, where dogs could not be removed from their location, because again, science or research dictates that if you vaccinate a dog, imagine like taking them away from their location. Like, what is the point of herd immunity? Like, you've just taken the dog and put it somewhere else. And these street dogs, they some are community dogs, where you would see that a lot of people have like food left in the corner of their houses because they know that this particular street has like two street dogs, maybe, or three. And that happens even on my street. Like, I know exactly who the two dogs are on my street. And so you would see a lot of people being compassionate and going out of their way to feed these dogs. I know people who feed like 30 dogs every day, twice a day, 30 dogs, and get into trouble with like other people, because every time a dog like screams at a vehicle or like makes their life a little more difficult, um, you want someone to blame the situation on. And so you go to the person who's like compassionate with dogs. So he's like, "Oh, your dog did this to me." I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, so the government, before there was now there's an actual law that says you can't remove these dogs, you can't kill dogs. Like, the street dogs are actually protected. But even though there is a law, what happens is that a lot of people aren't aware of it, or they just don't want to sympathize, or they just don't want to follow it. Like, because even to file a case against an animal abuser, you would need evidence, you would need people to come forward. But I think there's like a very like lack of trust in institutions. Like, you don't want to go to the police, or you don't want to go complain, because that just means that you're gonna be, part of this whole system that's gonna, sort of ruin your days to come. Like, it might even lead to harassment. So people don't want to get involved, even if you've witnessed something criminal. They just don't want to. Oh, I don't want to take responsibility for it. So I think every time someone complained of an animal abuse case, I would just find it very difficult for people to come forward and like tell me exactly what happened, and like with evidences of like exactly what happened. Um, that, and then obviously I think the hard part of seeing abused animals is just gut wrenching. Like, there were moments where I would see these cases and I would go back into my office and cry, uh, because I knew that there more cases were coming in. Like, but I had to come back. I had to continue to do whatever I was doing, because if I could save one dog, then that makes my job worth it. And with the government officials, I think they're also overwhelmed by the complaints that people give them. Like, they just genuinely, their people just want dogs to just disappear. And when you give them like scientific explanations of like, yo, that's not possible. And CNVR genuinely has worked. Like, is the only effective method of humanely um, managing dog population. They just don't want to hear it. So it makes it very difficult. I remember like having like a full-fledged, and this was a very important official meeting. I was the only girl there, I was the youngest one there, and I was talking about dogs. Nobody, nobody would want to take me seriously. But I remember like they usually in Bangladesh, when you're in the middle of meetings, like they give you tea and stuff, like people drink and like continue on. I wasn't even touching my food because I was just so like anxious to like, I will not leave this room unless you tell me that you're not removing the dogs in question. And so you really need that sort of attitude when you go into these meetings. Like, it could go south, people could yell at you, people could personally attack you, assassinate your character even, like um say random stuff like, oh, you're crazy, or bring in, I think this is a very popular argument where people talk about humans, because this is a developing country and a lot of people live under poverty, and to compare that to like, why are you saving dogs, why aren't you putting all that money into saving human beings, and just to explain that this is not like a, or like, this isn't a case of, oh, if I put money here I can't put money there. Like, it's, to see a city well functioned, you have to acknowledge animal welfare. You have to also acknowledge how intertwined human welfare is to animal welfare. If there is a rabies outbreak, human beings, and particularly those who interact with these street dogs the most, which are people on the streets, or people who don't have, who are underprivileged, they're going to be suffering, and they don't have the money to sort of take care of themselves. And rabies has 100% mortality rate. And when legitimate organizations are calling for vaccination drives, but you, because you don't like dogs, are saying no, and you're stubborn, and you're a powerful government official, and you probably gonna get away with it. I feel like the attitude that you have to take into these meetings is that, fine, then I won't leave. Fine, then I will protest. Fine, then, like, you have to have that sort of demeanor. Like, you're backed up by people, like you're backed up by science, you're backed up by legality, like everything. Like, you are here for the long haul, essentially. But, and you can imagine, like, if you were having to do all of that for just a single meeting, it's very emotionally taxing. It's very like you go home and you're falling asleep because you have no energy to do nothing else. Um, but even that has sort of shifted because recently, which has been good to see that a lot of people are coming together, even without the organization's influence, coming together to talk about animals, coming together to talk about how they are. Street dogs in Bangladesh are a fabric of what Bangladesh is. And to acknowledge that really helps animal welfare organizations to put their argument forward because we're backed up by like 100 people outside the meeting room. And so that's been a good change. I feel like I've
You
ranted on for hours.
No, I was gonna say I was gonna compliment your answer style because you go from like you take us on such a roller coaster of emotions where you tell us the serious aspect, but then we get back to the positive outcome at the end, and it was good. It was good. I liked it. It was have you noticed? I guess there was I wanted to well I wanted there was a couple of things I wanted to ask you actually after that. One of them was kind of about being a woman in this kind of workplace where you are
Yeah,
dealing with
yeah,
men. Uh,
yeah,
and the arrogance or kind of the disrespect that comes along with that just based on gender.
yeah.
And do you think that that has affected the way that you work or the way that you kind of do things?
Absolutely.
Mm.
I think something that my director, so Rubayapu, taught me was essentially, I think a big part was to teach me how to be a woman and to do my job well.
Mm.
Um, I would every time I'd accompany her to these meetings in government offices where some people wouldn't respect you for who you are, respect you as a human. Like it's to demand for respect was like a very big thing that you're asking for. So I would see her in how she answered, how she dealt with certain situations. And again, in some situations, to putting your ego aside. Like someone has said something incredibly offensive, and you take it on, you pretend nothing has happened, you laugh it off, because you constantly have to ask yourself, like, what are the repercussions of this decision that I would be taking? Like, if I make a big deal out of something, and I'm not talking about, obviously, not like talking about abuse or like absolutely unforgivable things. I'm talking about, like if someone's joking and they're being passive aggressive, or if someone's like in a meeting but they're constantly putting you down. And I think women all over the world face this. Like it's a thing. And like you could be working in animal welfare for decades, and like a man who read a piece of a draft, like a 6-page long draft, mansplains what animal welfare is to you, and you just have to nod your head and be like, okay, are you going to sign the document I brought you to sign? Just sign it and we're good to go. Because you constantly have to think about how long it took you to get to this meeting, and how important it is to get that goal done. And then you think about all the dogs that are going to be properly, like, that are going to be impacted, and it sort of lets you get your goals straight. But as a woman, I think just the random, like, I think it was a lot of passive aggressiveness, a lot of microaggressive behavior that I had to constantly go through. Even when I'm like going on field visits and I'm running after this team who are running after dogs, there are people who gather around the team, sometimes making it hard for people to catch dogs because there's so many people just seeing what's happening. And so even in that scenario, if I am making the announcement to like, can you back away? We're trying to do work here. How many people would even respond to me yelling? Um, like there were limited numbers. Like I would need someone on my team to be like, can you just please, can you relay that information? Or even when I'm in the office, and specifically because I wear a hijab, which clearly means like is a representation of my religion. I think people have a lot of assumptions related to what I wear, or to my faith, and to what a woman who also has faith, what does that mean? So they don't view me as someone who can be assertive, can be, in an organization where there are dogs moving about. I remember this one uncle of mine who came to visit and then called up my dad and said, "Oh my goodness, your daughter is so brave. She's working with dogs all the time." And I'm like, uh, okay. Like it made it sound like I was in this facility where there are ferocious dogs everywhere, because that's how he sees dogs. And
Mhm.
that's how he sees me, a little child, regardless of how old I am. Um, and then, so people coming into my office and feeling like they found it comfortable to ask me about my faith, to ask me about my faith in relation to dogs, or to question it, or to give me unsolicited advice about, oh, you could be doing something else. Oh, and also in the larger society in Bangladesh, for a woman to be working in animal welfare, it was a very difficult thing to explain to aunties and uncles, especially. Like, you'd go to weddings and people would ask me like, what you do, and I would try to not, like, to swerve around the question, because I just don't want to get into it. So I'd say, oh, I work for an NGO, and then they would ask, what NGO? And I'm like, yeah, I'd say the name, and they'd be like, oh, what does it do? And I'm like, animal welfare, street dogs and street cats, like, can, like, we also have this facility, like, the facility also treats, like, street animals for free if they're brought to the facility. So I was talking about that, and then I remember this one auntie just straight up looking at my face and saying, thought you were smart. I thought you were smart. So, why aren't you working in a bank or something? And I'm like, yeah, why am I not? And walking away, like, this was very, I feel like, obviously I can see your face and you're shocked, but but this was so common. And I think I'm very grateful that my family sort of supported my decision to do what I was doing, and my family is very animal welfare centric. So they took it as a joke. They helped me laugh at it. But I
Mhm.
know for sure, if my family wasn't supportive, if I had to do it on my own, it would be extremely, extremely, extremely difficult as a woman to work in animal welfare in this country. And you always have to be assertive. You always, like, if you're trying to calmly talk to someone who's threatening like dog abuse or something at you, it's like your whole demeanor sort of shifts, because you constantly have to be on the offensive or defensive, like you're always constantly fighting. So it is difficult, but again, rewarding. And something to note, that I feel like not a lot of women would be comfortable being the only, like, other than my director, being the only woman on the team who's working with all men. Like, all the people who are catchers and the vets are all men, so I was the only woman there.
Mhm.
um, and I take really, like, a lot of pride in the fact that never in my time in working in that facility have I ever felt unsafe, or have I ever felt like undermined because I'm a woman. It was mostly outside people, but yeah, it was quite the experience. Like, I feel like it builds character.
Y- Yeah, that's yeah. I, you you know we were at the man. I'm sat here like, oh, I don't know how to.
Yeah, no,
I like it's
yeah.
just the I yeah. Your story is probably shockingly common, and it's
Yeah,
inspiring to hear how you kind of push through it and keep going, and don't let it stop the work that you're doing. So
yeah.
yes, it's. But I guess my main question, kind of coming away from all of that, would be how is it you keep going? What was it that makes you really want to kind of do this, and how do you deal with the mess that comes along with it?
The dogs, really.
Hmm.
Just knowing that I have to go back and continue doing this, so dogs continue to feel safe. Like, what happens if Alperno gets closed? Like, what happens if everyone quits? Imagine, like, for someone in Bangladesh to have a number to call if they see animal abuse, or like if for them to feel like, oh, if I carry this injured dog to a place, I won't have to worry about money. Um, like to be a part of that is huge, and I take a lot of pride in that, obviously. And I'm grateful genuinely throughout. I still say this. It's been like, even though I've left the organization to pursue my master's, obviously, but even after, um, I still talk very highly of the organization because of the work that it does, the and how important the work is, um, and just like the things that I learned from it. And something to talk about is when you have a boss who understands compassion fatigue, it is it is a game changer. Like for someone, when you have people in your management who are compassionate and who understand and respect goals, but not at the expense of an employee, like not at the expense of someone's sanity, or mental health, or even physical health. And someone who's in tune with those sort of in that line of thinking really, really helps. I remember I saw a dog die, and then I had a hectic meeting which did not go well. Like I was ambushed by a lot of people, um, and just felt cornered, and then had to go home. And like I feel like even coming home with that much baggage, like you can't be expected to have like a normal conversation with someone in your family. Um, After that, I feel like I reached out to my boss, and I said that I just need to I need a breather. I need to like take 2 days off, or like a little bit of time, and I'll let you know if I feel better. And she was like, the response was, take as long as you need to feel like you can, do your best again. Like come back and um, reset your goals, reset your mind, and feel free to come back. And I feel like that message did like 50% of my healing for me, because someone is out there who just validated a pain that I couldn't explain to anybody else. And I couldn't even go back and recollect all of the things that happened that day, because that's traumatic in and of itself, just to recount all of those events. And so for someone to understand that, um, that is what kept me going. And I think it's for every single development organization. If you're working for development, and if empathy is not the first thing that comes into your head, you're doing something wrong. Like you're doing something that is essentially going to lead to burnout. So yeah, that would be my answer.
uh, oh, it went from such a fun, light-hearted interview, real, real like serious, real fast. But it was such a. It's interesting to like, yes, it's interesting to hear all of these things and hear about how you keep going, because it's important to kind of understand these things and these narratives. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing them with me on the show, and I hope everybody who's listening got a gain from that as well, as much as I think I have and will when I listen back to this many times. Following up on that, I guess what would I like to ask everybody? Um, what would your piece of advice be for someone who's listened to this and feels inspired, and I guess wants to do something about this? And I suppose there's two audiences we would have to talk to. I guess number one would be somebody listening to this not in Bangladesh, but then also,
Yeah.
what if you were in Bangladesh? So, if you're in Bangladesh, what would be your piece of advice for those people?
If you're in Bangladesh, I think I would encourage people to go over, like, essentially familiarize yourself with the work that Obhoyaronno is doing and has been doing for a long time. And just to understand, and I think this is advice for everyone, just to understand how human welfare is genuinely intertwined with animal welfare, and just to sort of take that in every time you make decisions, every time you are making a decision that impacts you, know that it could impact other beings as well. and to think and to allow yourself and to practice that sort of thinking. um, Essentially find out what organizations are working for what purpose, and do your own research. Really do your own research. Find out what legislation is protecting what group of animals, and see if you want to, get involved. And something is very important to note: in a developing country, if an organization is small enough, like the funding that comes in goes into everyday work. We can't expand to a point where everyone in Bangladesh knows exactly what we're doing, or every single dog is safe in Bangladesh, like we have to rely on the community to be able to take that stance. We just want to give them the voice. We just want to give them that space, or like lift them up on a space where they feel confident to go up against people who are abusing animals. And there's legislation to do so. There are people who, there's a whole community of dog lovers in Bangladesh to back you up. And so I would urge people to take accountability, take action when they see something wrong. Really, really speak up, because if you stay silent hoping that someone else is going to speak up, and if they do the same thing, that's just abuse, just gone, just happened, and nothing happens to retaliate. So that would be one of my advices. Yeah.
And then for people who are not in Bangladesh, if they're sitting halfway across the world, what can they do?
I think to understand, I think just to decolonize certain development projects where you have to, I think I struggled with explaining how development projects on the grassroots level works in Bangladesh, in a country like Bangladesh versus a country like Scotland. Like, you don't see dogs everywhere, like street dogs unleashed, like feeding off of, whatever they can find on the streets. So just to dismantle that idea of, just because you haven't seen it, it doesn't, like, just because you've experienced seeing something else doesn't mean that is the goal for every country or every institution or every locality. Like, everywhere there's a different solution. And so if you want to help, look up organizations like Obhoyaronno, who are doing work on the streets every day. If you want to donate to them, that's incredible. Incredibly helpful. If you want to just spread the word on what CNVR is, even just like do your research on, like, street dogs. Okay, that's not a reality in my country, but that's a phenomenon that exists in so many others. So maybe we can talk about it. Yeah, and just, I feel like, continue to be kind, please. Thank you. Like, please just go out of your way to be kind, to animals, to human beings, even. Yeah, that would be my advice. I sound like a where is my peace Nobel Prize? Like, I'm just waiting here just for you to give me one.
Uh,
But yeah.
I'll edit out all of my talking from this episode and just make it a TED talk just for you. Just like an
Yeah,
hour of
imagine.
Tasnia. uh, well, thank you. That kind of brings us to the end of all of the questions I had for you today. Is there anything else you think, oh, we haven't talked about that you'd like to touch on more, or is
That
there?
is such a dangerous question, Jack. What if I continue talking on for the next half an hour and you're like, I don't know what to edit? But no, again, thank you so much for giving me the platform to talk about something that is essentially one of the biggest highlights of my life, to have worked in an organization like Obhoyaronno and to have learned the things that I learned. And just, yeah, just so much gratitude. And thank you for being a friend that I could genuinely, at any random hour of the day, talk about animals and it wouldn't be weird. Because we're just talking about animals. That's what we do.
Mhm.
Um,
If
so,
anyone who knows us is listening to this, it this is what we talk about all the time. Do you have no
yeah.
concern that me and Tasnia are ever talking about you or anything? It's always this conversation over
Yeah,
and
shout
over
out
and
to
over again.
Nessie, Penny's dog, that we obsess over as well. Yeah, notice how I didn't give a shout out to Penny. I gave it to Nessie. And I think that is a part of our personalities. And I think embrace these people. I just like to say to human-centric workers, or, just embrace us. We talk about animals all the time. Please let us. And just honestly, this world is a cruel place, and it can be. And I've witnessed a lot of cruelty, unnecessarily, like inhumane stuff. But at the same time, I've always seen people doing the work to sort of balance things out, doing way more than I thought was feasible for one person to do. But to do it. And I think the story of Obhoyaronno is inspiring for a lot of people because of how Rubayapu started it. You see something, you wanna work against it, like go for it. Like, you get one life, go make it count. And it became an official TED Talk.
And I was going to say, on that very, very inspiring note, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure you will be back again very soon to talk about something else. But yes, thank you very, very much for your time today, Tasnia. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, for having me.
Well, what did you think? I think it was an incredibly insightful, interesting, wonderful chat, but I'm slightly biased because it's Tasnia and she is fantastic to me. So I want to thank her again so much for her time. I think she provided context for things that obviously I will never ever be able to provide context for. I will never know what it's like to work as a woman in conservation, and so to hear her perspective and hear her experiences, I hope have shaped everybody else's view, not just my own, on what we can kind of do to make this a more inclusive practice and a more kind of accepting environment, and yeah, just more constructive environment, because there is no place for almost said a bad word. There is no place for rubbish like that in the conservation community. So I really hope everybody has learned or taken from her experiences, and hopefully will reflect on them and their own actions and how we can make it a better place for everybody. But yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of the show. You can go away and give your dogs a hug, tell them you love them, and follow us. While you're doing that, make sure to follow us on social media at Pangolin Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and make sure to subscribe on or follow us on your podcast streaming service of choice. I'll also put all the links for the things we discussed during the episode down below. So if you want to learn more about St Andrews, I guess I'll put the link for that. I'll put links to the charity that Tasnia worked for, and yes, all sorts of other things down there. So if you want to learn more, make sure and check that out as well. But for now, that brings us to the end of the show. So thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're launching a bit of a special event. Next week will be our World Ocean Day celebration will begin. So look forward to that. But you've got a little while to wait. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.